Hey, this is Charlie Barrett from Games Radar. I'm here with Carolyn,
Hello.
and we're here also with Lee Cummings, who's brought War of the Worlds on XBLA and PSN. He's going to play through the game for us and tell us what their inspirations are and what kind of game they're trying to make here. I think the first thing we're going to hear is who's coming up now.
This is an alpha build of the game.
How long did it take for the
Stewart.
Earth to end?
Woo.
3 short days. Looking from this window, it seems impossible to imagine that an invasion took place out there. How arrogant we were to assume that we were alone in the universe, and how complacent we had become, going about our little lives, while all the time our world was being watched by an intelligence greater and far less sympathetic than our own.
So then who is Patrick Stewart playing in this game?
So Patrick narrates our main character, Arthur Clarke, who finds himself in a horrific situation in 1953 London, right in the middle of an alien attack. And there's our hero in his whole rotoscoped glory. We decided to go very old school with this game, so it's all 2D. There's not any 3D in here, and all the animations are all rotoscoped, which is basically throwing our art director in front of a green screen, having a handheld camera and taping him running around looking like a bit of an idiot, and then stenciling over the top of that with the art.
I had been visiting my friend Ogilvy at his Clifton Observatory.
What kind of games inspired you to go for this 2D rotoscope style?
This is really a love letter back to games like Flashback and Out of This World and Heart of Darkness and the original Prince of Persia. These games around 89, 1991 that Mike Micah, the lead designer of The Ocean, and myself played far too much. Signs of wasted years. And we really wanted to do a game which hadn't been done since then. Something really, harken back to these games that we loved and used the technology from the day and layers and layers of parallax backgrounds and rotoscoped instead of hand-drawn, boned animations you see a lot these days.
So with the new technology on 360 and PS3, how many layers can you get into this game?
The engine could do 250, each running at different speed and transparency and things like that. I think the most we do is somewhere between 50 and 60 on one of the levels. And that's our poor protagonist's train being derailed just outside of Paddington Station. So the first level is set in Paddington Station just after this derailment and all hell's breaking loose. One of the things we really wanted to do was have this vision of London in 1953 where information didn't travel quickly, and this guy's on a train and the introduction voiceover, something's happening, something bad's happening. Nobody quite knows what. The BBC tries to get information out there, but it's not like today with the internet. So as he goes in, Cylinder lands nearby and derails the train.
I found a scene of utter devastation. Alive and sound in body, thank heaven. But how long had I been unconscious? My watch, the hands had been frozen at the moment of impact. I no longer had any sense of time.
So to begin this level, we do a heavy matte to really focus the attention on a part of the screen, and that sort of stuff is very retro, is really sort of flashback era. And things like that you just don't see these days, and we thought it'd be great to do a game which used all these little techniques, these arts and gameplay tricks.
Were you inspired by any previous adaptations of War of the Worlds?
So the game is a companion piece to the 1953 movie, which is an incredible movie for the time, and really still is. What we wanted to do was take that story. The movie shows what was going on in LA during the invasion and what was happening in London at that time. So we can have a new hero and have his story using some of the visuals from the movie. When you get hit by the heat ray and some of the Martian design is heavily influenced by that movie.
Calling for help, desperate for a doctor, a leader, someone who could.
So we haven't
save
seen any of those yet, but
Guiltily,
what are the Martians going to look like in this
How
game?
could I stop
So the Martians come in all shapes and sizes. We have the classic tripods who will destroy buildings around you and have their heat ray and a massive threat. And they're the things really going through London, destroying it right now. Then we have everything down to these mechanical spiders who will grab you and kill you. We have black smoke, and we have red weed, and so all the other classic standbys from the War of the Worlds mythos rather.
But at this point in the game, he's still trying to figure out what exactly has happened.
Yeah, we wanted this sort of, even though it's being heavily narrated, just be thrown into this chaos, and you're not sure what's happening, and you just need to stay alive. We don't have a health meter, we don't have a scoring system as such. It's just, if you get to the end of the game, if you get to the end of a level, you're doing really, really well. The difficulty is really, we felt that games these days, progressively over the last couple of decades, have become a lot easier than they ever were. On the Amiga and the ST back in the 80s, these games were, back then they were very short but very, very hard, and now we have longer games which are very, very easy in a lot of cases. And games like Demon Souls really inspired us to go back and be brave enough to do a harder game, and something which will be a bit challenging. And I think there's certainly gamers out there who will appreciate the difficulty of this. So it's not random death. You always know why you died. You know what to do to get over that barrier, and we have very tight checkpoints, so you never have to. This isn't Mega Man territory where you have to play for 25 minutes to get back to that fall that you screwed up earlier. But each challenge should be hard, and when you get through, you shouldn't have to do it again. That was sort of what we're going by.
What are some of those more challenging sections that you'll face later in the game?
Oh, we throw you through everything. The game really evolves. The gameplay evolves. There's running, evasion. There's some basic combat stuff later. A lot of puzzles, physics-based puzzle stuff. Cannibalt-inspired rooftop runs where the buildings are being destroyed around you by Martian.
It's supposed to be one of these checkpoints now.
Nice.
So that's one of those examples where this might be a hard jump to make, but it's going to put you right in front of the jump again, so you don't have to...
Yeah, exactly. So everyone listening to this thinks I'm playing. Thinks I can't play my own game. There you go. So the art style as well, we wanted to do, with everything in this project, we wanted to go a bit more unique, and we had the leeway, and Paramount really gave us the freedom to run with this in whatever way we wanted to. So the game starts off more colourful, but then we heavily desaturate everything to pull you into this dark, sort of depressing London. But when you start to see the Martians, we really pop the colour back in, so the red weed is bright red, and the Martian heat rays are vivid green, while everything around you is all desaturated.
How violent does this game get at certain points?
It's not terribly violent. There's lots of ways for you to die, but there's very, very few ways for you to destroy the Martians. So it's mostly an exercise in just watching your character die in many, many different ways. So we did a lot of VO for this. We really wanted to make it a personal story, and part of that was having a narrator who had a voice and a gravitas who could carry this game by himself. That's one of the main reasons we went with Patrick. He's got this incredible voice, and I never get tired listening to him. I know a lot of people feel the same way. But we wrote, Chris Fowler, our author, who wrote the story, wrote it was about 28 pages of narration, and we sat in a studio over 2 days for about 7 or 8 hours with Patrick, and he knocked out the story, and it was absolutely incredible. He really carries the story, and we have lots and lots of narration to pull you through this with a lot of detail that really brings the world to life around you. It gives you, this depth of the story that you don't see just from the action on the screen.
Was it difficult at all to get Patrick Stewart to sign on?
The executive producer on the title, and my better half, Susan, is amazing with things like that, and somehow she persuaded him to come on board and do this, and it really was a dream come true. He was our number one choice, as was Chris Hillsbeck on the music, as was David Kansari on directing, and Chris Fowler on writing. They were all our first choice, and we managed to get everyone, so we were very, very lucky.
I imagine he was familiar with the War of the Worlds. I mean, everybody is, but...
Yeah, he is a huge fan of the first movie. He said he used to run around with his brother quoting lines from it all the time. But we found out part of the game takes place on the south bank of the Thames, and you see some of the Festival of Britain structures from there. And he told us that while this game was going on, the month we set the game, he was actually in London singing a choir at one of the locations in the game.
Oh, nice.
So it was you know, a lot of people had very personal connections to this game, to the story and the locations, which is awesome.
Well, we're seeing some of the tripods in the background. How close do we actually get to those?
You get very up close and personal with those later in the game, and they're very terrifying and very, very dangerous.
And I think you were saying earlier they're also very large.
Yeah, they're pretty huge. We have a scene where you're silhouetted by him, and it takes up the whole screen, and then starts destroying the buildings around you.
So I guess this is our first look at the actual Martians.
These are some of the
Besides
spiders.
the
This is
background.
an early version of the spider where the grapple animation is missing in this build. You can escape from them.
So now we're in a different level. How much have we jumped here?
So this is about a quarter or a third of the way through the game. The first chunk of the game is the fall of humanity, essentially. And a big part of every War of the Worlds story is always seeing humanity fall, at least symbolically. So you have to get that point of despair, which just our character, our main character, and the hell around him. So here we're in Hyde Park, and it's the last stand of the British Army. So in the background, you'll see tanks everywhere being destroyed. You see, it really is just this decimation of the British Army who don't know what to do. They have no defenses against these heat rays. And after this level, the game slows down a lot more sort of slow puzzling to sort of mimic the story slowing down around the character. Everyone's gone, everyone's fled London or has been killed.
You can see a lot of layers going on here that you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, so this is, I think, this is 40, 45, 50 layers of parallax sprites. Very old school. There's some really cool lighting effects we're doing, but it's all sprites. It's all this stuff with all the tools of the trade back in the early 90s. We're just doing it in HD and really pushing it to the extreme. As Michael likes to say, this is the game that he would have liked to make back then if he had the horsepower. So we're taking all the tech from that day and just pushing it through many more cores.
So did you guys go back and replay stuff like Flashback and Alice World?
Heavily, yeah. Last year when we decided on the format of this game, and we're going to do this love letter back to those games. So we spent a lot of time going back and replaying them. They aged really, really well. Those games are still incredible games. They're incredibly hard games, and but they're really fun to play. So these are the Martian drones trying to hunt down anyone on the battlefield.
And you can't take them out, so you have to find other ways to either dodge them or destroy them.
Yeah, you get an axe later in the game. We didn't want guns and grenades and things. This wasn't a story about a soldier. It's a story about a biologist thrown in this horrific situation. So you can turn some of the Martian technology on them. In this level there are some sort of Bouncing Betty-esque mines around the world. If you time it correctly, take out some drones with the mines.
And so these NPCs are more just for this level because it's kind of showing the last big push of civilization.
Yeah, we wanted to have a lot of action on the screen. So we have a lot of infantrymen running around, getting killed around you. Fodder, as we like to call it.
A lot of electrified skeletons showing up.
Yeah.
They kind of show you what not to do.
Yes, that's how they started. Was we didn't want to have super heavy tutorials. Pause the game. This is how you do it. So we go for situations like this. We really push. You see it and then know not to do it. Sort of game design. Still see people getting nuked. You'll see people running to mines to get blown up. You'll see the things you shouldn't do, as opposed to just stopping the game and trying to walk you through using text or audio.
Experience had taught the soldiers to hide in the shadows and remain silent when the flying things appeared.
Oh, there we go.
Patrick Stewart is so mesmerizing.
There are not many actors out there who can carry, I think, this much dialogue. Hours and hours of dialogue. We're really, really lucky to say yes.
And then who's doing the music?
That's Chris Hulsbeck, who's my favourite video game musician, who's been doing... He'll hear this and I'll butcher everything. I think 84 he started doing music for games. The Great Gianna Sisters, which is everyone in the UK knows, probably less in the US, but it's a classic Amiga ST game from the mid-80s. The Turrican games, of course, and all the amazing work he did in Factor 5 over the years. And again, he's our first choice for music, and we're very, very lucky that he said yes.
And then you mentioned Chris Fowler as the writer. What books would our listeners maybe you know him for?
Oh, he did a lot of sort of dark fiction, short stories about London. Then he did the Bryant and May series, detective novels set in London, which are all incredible books, and you should all go on Amazon and pick up a Chris Fowler.
And so this game all takes place in London, the whole game?
Yeah, it's all in London. We wanted it to be super authentic to the geography of London. London is much a character in this game as anything else. So we plotted a route. Before we started the story, we came up with a really interesting route around London. We really wanted to start with Paddington Station. I grew up in South Wales, and going towards London down the M4 on the Great West, the Great Western Railway was a huge part of going to London. I thought it'd be really interesting to start a game with something people can understand. You start on a train, it's all colourful, you're heading into a major city, it's nothing too strange, and then we start pulling the rug out from beneath you.
We could now see that the Martian cylinders were embedded in the very centers of the craters. Nearby, I overheard two senior officers discussing plans they had drawn up to fire the cylinders with explosives. A dangerous mission, but I could see it had some chance of success. I resolved to team up with them and offer my services in their cause.
This is the end of Hyde Park, where you join up with some soldiers who are trying to take down a shield generator, protecting some Martian technology. So you make your way over that structure you just saw, planting explosives. Then at the end of the level, you destroy it.
I felt like an infantryman trudging through endless flooded trenches during the lull between bombardments. I knew they must have thought about whether they'd ever see home and their loved ones again. I felt suddenly connected to them through history, and resolved to be reunited with Emily and Ben.
So who is Arthur Clarke looking for in the story?
For his fiancée and his wife. Fiancée and his brother.
That'd be great if he had a fiancé and a wife.
It was like that in the 50s. So here you have these rings which glow green and will kill you if you get too close while they're glowing. Again, old school timing puzzles.
So he set that explosive there.
Yeah, you set 3 over the structure and then you take it down. So it's a nice sort of story beat, taking down a big Martian technology.
So this will be kind of the boss battle of this level.
Yeah, we have these points where you know something big and obviously different happens. And, some of them are literally boss fights, and this one sort of acts a bit like one.
Okay, so when can our listeners get their hands on this game and play this for themselves?
So the game will be out later this year, Q4 this year, towards Christmas.
And it was on XBLA and PSN?
That's right, yeah.
Okay, well, this has been Charlie Baer and Carolyn Goodmanson.
Hello.
And,
Goodbye.
Goodbye. And Lee Cummings, and thanks a lot for showing us the game.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, thanks for having me here.